Welcome, Mr. Ryan Gibson. He's here to talk to us about all kinds of interesting government-esque cool careers. To get us started off, Ryan, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us kind of what you do right now.
Sure. Hey, again, I'm Ryan Gibson. I'm a UNCC alum. I graduated last May 2019. I've been in DC for about the past year. Since I've been here, I've worked for a private contractor where I did jobs for various Homeland Security offices and the EPA. So I did some work for FEMA for a few offices in there. I worked for the water security section of the Environmental Protection Agency. Most recently, I was working for the Office of the Chief Medical Officer at the Department of Homeland Security, which is kind of relevant to our current situation because I was specifically responding to coronavirus. And then most recently, actually in the past 10 days, I just started a new job. I am presently the manager of global safety and security for the International Republican Institute. And for those of you that are politically minded, we're actually not affiliated with a party. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting civil society, free democracy, and safe elections globally. We're in about 100 countries with a permanent presence in about 45 or 50, given on your definition of it. And right now, I'm mostly managing all those field offices. I manage their emergency reaction plans. I approve all their travel. I conduct a lot of training. For any of you that read my bio, I have a varied background. I like to try everything, and I get bored really easily. That's why I switch jobs all the time. If you have an interest in, GIS, the environment, government work, military, law enforcement, public health, any of that stuff, I'm happy to take any questions any of you guys have, or just things. Maybe towards the end, we could even talk about the current situation with COVID-19. I am by no means a doctor or a healthcare professional, but I can tell you some very basic stuff that I do know given my my work in the international space and my work for Homeland Security. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise a hand. You can just talk or type it in. What do you want to do?
Nice. Yeah, definitely. So you'll see your chat box. Feel free to put those in, or you can even unmute yourself and ask the question. I just have to know, how on earth have you gotten so many awesome positions? I mean, it's really awesome roles that you've done and that you're currently in. How have you done it?
I got really lucky. I was born overseas, so I knew that I wanted to go back overseas for work. I knew that I didn't want to stay home. And I was also very lucky that I was, one of those people born, I was just born, healthy enough and, which I know is rare sometimes, that I was allowed to go to the military. That just opens crazy opportunities for you. I got to circle the globe by the time I was 19. I actually circled the globe before I traveled north of the Mason-Dixon line as an adult, which is really funny to me. Yeah, I'd been there as a kid. The first state I lived in was North Dakota. I don't recommend it, but I got to circle the globe before ever going above the Mason-Dixon line, and I am a at-heart Southerner despite the lack of accent. Um, Mostly just volunteering. I volunteered for everything. One of my leaders early in life gave me the mantra, be forever in a state of self-improvement. I know that sounds a little cheesy. I really stuck with that. I just pick tangible goals all the time. And once you make it, always have more in the back burner. You're just never done learning, never done growing. And, it's not necessarily don't have pride or self-confidence, but always recognize that you're not the best you that you could be. You're not your actualized self yet, and you may never be, and that's okay. So if there was a challenging role, I always volunteered for it. I read a lot. I listened a lot, and I also talk too much, as you can probably tell. But that was not a tip. I got really lucky. So in the Marines, I was double lucky because I got sent to a unit that deployed constantly and was terrible to be in. So it motivated me to volunteer for new stuff. That's why I got involved in the embassies. That was the best thing that ever happened to me career-wise. I got to do, VIPs for heads of state. I got to meet former Secretary of Defense James Mattis back when he had just retired from being General Mattis. I got to meet General Petraeus, a week before he actually got less than honorably relieved of his position. Cool stuff like that. Got to travel the world doing that. I came back to UNCC because my family is here. And my sister's actually a UNCC alumni. She liked it, so I figured I'd just go. Just my family asked me to be home. I've been gone for like 6 years. I spent at least 4.5 of that overseas. They asked me to come home for a bit. And then while I was at UNCC, I met really cool people. I have friends to this day that I made in college, and even a couple of them helped me out get my job at Novant Health, what sparked this WebEx.
Mhm.
So a long-winded answer is just I volunteered for everything and always tried to jump on the hardest stuff I could possibly get to. And one piece of advice I would give is always reach above your head, reach above what you think you can do, because if you show the confidence and get in there, you can learn to do anything on the job. Most of my jobs I just learned by doing. There's no real preparation for some of the stuff we did. And I think that's a lot of life. So sorry if that's a really long answer.
No, dude, I love it. I mean, I love the info, and I think it says a lot. I mean, I'm a big believer in the kind of the chaos theory of careers, where there's a bunch of stuff flying around, and you see those moments, and those are the moments you take something and you like run with it, or you take that piece of advice, or you make that connection. So I think that's a great demonstration of what you've done.
Appreciate that. I have a question. Am I nervous or scared working in the COVID-19 situation? Me personally, no. Um, but that's because I'm no longer a frontline worker. You know, I'm no longer a healthcare provider. I'm no longer a nurse. I'm no longer law enforcement of any kind or military. So I have the luxury, excuse me, I'm sorry. I have the luxury of sitting in my house at my desk and giving advice to other people. It took me a long time to get here, and it is not lost on me on how much of a privilege that is. I'm also, very fortunate that my partner and I, neither of us lost our jobs. We're both working from home. Actually, our industry grew. She works in development and for military health, and I work security. So both of our fields actually expanded right now. So we're pretty lucky. I'm not nervous, also because working at DHS, we have really high quality people working on these issues, despite some of the negative feedback we've gotten about, I won't get political, specific leadership, things like that. And I'm also not nervous because enough people are taking this seriously and doing the right thing. I do get nervous when I see people blatantly disregarding social distancing, or at my job, they'll ask me permission to travel somewhere, and I have to tell them no and explain to them why, like as an adult with years of experience, why you may not go into an active war zone during a pandemic or something like that. But yeah, as you can tell, I have really long-winded answers. I'll try and shorten these. Jesus.
No, they're great, but they're full of great info. And so what is like your day to day right now? Because I know this role's pretty new, but let's just take like what you're doing right now. What is kind of like a day to day looking like?
So I jumped in with both feet on this job. I think, like we mentioned before the recording started, this job took me 6 interviews to get, and so I knew they knew I was qualified for the position. I've actually already been the acting director for security at my company because my boss was on holiday. He's based out of the UK, so they had a 4-day weekend. My day to day, it's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of there's the routine background stuff. I'm writing emergency response guidance. I'm writing guidance on COVID-19. I am revising field office security plans, things like that. I'm also in charge of our travel system. So that includes using multiple resources to conduct risk analysis for various countries or regions of countries to determine the level of safety or what countermeasures we need to put in place to go to these countries. And just a lot of really random, just one-off advice. People go like, I don't know this answer. We have an open inbox at our company for my director and I, because we're a pretty small team. And it's just a security team. I just get inundated with questions like, can I do this? Do I need your approval to do this? Things like that. Once I get back into the office, I'm going to be conducting a lot of training. I'll be giving overseas briefings. I'll be giving trusted traveler trainings, things like that. And then whenever the director is out, I handle a lot of policy stuff. I advise the senior office. I only have 2 bosses, well, technically 3 bosses right now. I have my director, and then I have the COO, and then the president of the company, and that's pretty much it. So we run pretty lean at this nonprofit, which is good. I like that. It makes us really adaptable.
And so when you say nonprofit, do you get paid?
Our funding comes from a few sources, and all this is public. We were founded by Reagan back in the day when he initiated. I hope it's Reagan. I'm going to sound so stupid if it's not. The National Endowment for Democracy. It's us and a few other organizations, and we're also funded by the State Department, and we're also funded by USAID, which is our development agency. for overseas projects. And essentially, we have pretty much a fixed budget. The way a nonprofit works is you don't make money per se. Nothing you do is profit driven. So essentially, say hypothetically, you're given $50 million or something for a year. The government gives your company that amount of money. That money sits in a pool. Essentially, you ask for permission to spend chunks of it on certain projects that you use for international development or whatever your projects are. And obviously, that also covers your overhead like training, HR, health and benefits, pay, all that stuff. And then essentially, the joke is like, at a for-profit company, you spend as little as possible to pocket as much as you can. At a nonprofit, essentially, you haven't made money until you spend it. So if we get hypothetically $50 million, we almost certainly will spend $50 million to accomplish the mission. It'll be spent well. But if say we spend 46, you just give $4 million back. So everyone in your company is still paid. Everyone still gets benefits. They're actually really great about that. But you have to spend down to the cent. That's pretty much how it works for a nonprofit in a nutshell. So it's a lot different than a for-profit situation like I've been in the past, or even federal.
Yeah, I've noticed because students will hear nonprofit and they're like, well, I want to get paid. And I'm like, well, you'll get paid. I'm like, well, nonprofit means that like you are driven by the mission, and not.
I will say on that note, that stereotype, there's no smoke without fire. Across the board, some nonprofits, I think mine's pretty competitive, but some nonprofits, especially much smaller ones, we're like a medium size, but I think we're like 700-ish people total. Smaller nonprofits, they do essentially count on, if you care enough about the mission, you're willing to do it for a little bit less pay. And also because you're not a for-profit company, it's hard to justify like giant crazy CEO type bonuses and things. But I mean, you're going to get really competitive benefits and you're going to get pretty competitive pay. If you go to the private sector, my justification was I worked for a for-profit company recently that worked in mission spaces that I cared about, like EPA and Homeland Security and FEMA and things like that. The problem was your underlying goal at the end of the day is profit. So the more money you can suck out of your client, and in case our client's the federal government, so it was taxpayers in my mind, and I didn't like the money aspect of it, and I want to get back to a mission space, a mission-oriented space. So that's why I went to nonprofit, because it is entirely about the mission, much like a federal job would be.
So if you could give, and this will be my question, and then we'll open up for students. If you could give one piece of advice that you feel like has been instrumental in you getting into the, public health, health admin, government. I mean, you're really in an awesome industry that a lot of students want to be in. What is something that you think that students should do now to get themselves set up for success?
Man, that's hard to say. I had a really unique path, so it's hard for me to give like overarching advice. My advice would be really don't be afraid to try new things and take things on. Don't be afraid to reach a little bit above your head. If you feel like something might be too hard for you, it might be the day you start, but if you can get your foot in the door, I mean, it'll advance you quick. Almost all of my positions were because I was volunteering. I only got to go to the Office of Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction because I volunteered for it. I only got to go to embassies because I volunteered for it. If you don't ask for things, you're not going to get things.